theatre, film, TV and more. Suzy Wrong reviews it all on Joy Drive.
Good afternoon, Suzy Wrong.
Hi, Warren. I've got a younger friend who's really into dating apps, and the other day she sent me one in which I meant to find her matches for her.
What?
Yeah. So she's not allowed on this particular app to kind of make her own matches. So she's nominating godparents, of which I'm one of them, and other people do the same. So godparents are going through these people's profiles and kind of flicking them through their godchildren.
Oh my goodness. How do you feel about that, Suzy?
The responsibility is immense, right? I'm like terrified that she's going on a date with these guys and then they're like axe murderers and then I become responsible for it.
Of course, it's almost shifting the responsibility, isn't it? Well, it's your fault. You chose them.
That's right. But there's so little information to go on. You only have like 3 pictures and a few like quirky statements. So you're basically just, deciding based on appearance, which is so incredibly difficult.
Oh, I agree. I think that's one of the, the faults of the dating apps is it's all appearance based, and then you find out what the real person's like.
So I'm terrified that I'm sending her to a dangerous date, right? So I'm looking for really goody two shoes, really like safe guys, and she hates it. She absolutely hates it.
So what happens when you send them to her? Does she have to go on a date?
It's so funny. Yeah. So when it becomes a match, like her godfather, her godparents, and then the other guy's godparents, if they kind of create a match, then these two have to organize a date without being able to speak to each other, I think. Like the app kind of facilitates date and time and all that. Yeah, just to make it feel like a blind date, I suppose. And I think they don't even get to see photographs.
Suzy, would you like to select some for me?
No, thank you. I think you can. I think you can do that job on your own, because I can tell you, I'm not enjoying this at all. It's terrifying. It's terrifying.
Do you see any and think, I might have that one for myself?
Yeah, a little bit, but those ones I won't flick over to her, because if they're too attractive, then you think, there must be something wrong. If they're so attractive and they're still on an app at the age of 30-something, I'm not so sure. So I'm sending her like young, like she's only in her 20s. I'm sending her guys in their 20s who are wearing spectacles, who are very buttoned up, so they don't kill her. So she went on one date, and apparently it didn't go very well. She was really, really bored, but she has this rule where when she goes on a date, she has to do 2 hours of it. But at the end of it, she hated it so much. I think she's probably going to cancel this whole app situation.
So is this a new app? I've never heard of it before.
It is a new app. I won't tell the name because I don't want to recommend it to anyone. But it is. I hadn't heard about it, but because she's so into this whole dating app world, I don't know how many she's on, and she found this one, and she asked if I could be a part of this experiment for her, which I thought was interesting. Yeah.
It's interesting because it's almost a bit, it's not arranged marriage or anything like that, but you do have that external, I suppose, interference, don't you?
Yeah, and when you're at a certain age, you start to think that arranged marriage is not quite that bad an idea as you initially thought. Because when you're young, you're thinking like, what about attraction? What about love? But when you're older, you know that those things don't last more than, I don't know, however many months. So it's like it's kind of the important things that you want to look at. But when you're young, you kind of are blind to the important things. So so in a way, traditional arranged marriage has their merits, but it is a relic of the past.
I'm dating at the moment, Suzy. Have I told you? I've told you.
Oh! How many?
About 50. No, not at all. Just one. But it's
how long has it been?
It's been probably maybe 4 months or so.
Wow.
But just very slowly, very, very slowly. I'm talking snail's pace, because it's been a while for me. I'm not used to it. I've forgotten. I'm out of practice. I'm rusty. I feel awkward.
How far away do they live from you?
About 40 minutes. So
okay.
I like a bit of distance. I think that's good.
Yeah.
I don't know. Look, who knows? I just see how it goes. But I'm kind of, as you get older, you get quite kind of set in your ways. And, I don't know. If I was in my 20s, I'd probably be more open to it. We'd be living together by now after 4 months.
Yeah, that's right. But, you're not lesbians and you're not young. So I trust that you'll be able to take it a bit slower.
Yeah, I hope so. But, yes, it is a strange thing when you haven't done it for a few years. I will say that. But fun, nevertheless. Now, we're talking about a show. It's called I Kissed a Girl. It's streaming now. Suzy, what did you think of it?
The reality series begins with 10 women from the UK arriving in sunny Italy, all paired up based on their individual criteria for romantic partners. But we soon discover that not all the couplings work out, and participants figure out on their own how to improve their match by basically swapping around. Very quickly, however, intruders enter the sanctuary to cause further disruption. So yes, the dating show I Kissed a Girl, streaming on Binge, is very much like the countless other similar titles on your screens, except there are only women in this BBC production. Hosted by Danny Minogue, who appears very briefly in each episode, this is entertainment at its lightest, even though a lot of effort is put into fabricating high stakes and a lot of tears are shed. I'm not sure if many viewers will take any of this even remotely seriously. Those of us who are more romantically inclined, however, will likely find the series an interesting watch. I certainly did enjoy the ease with which it got me wondering how humans tick when it comes to matters of the heart. Why is a person attractive to some and not to others? Why are some people so sure about what they like and others can't make up their minds? The show spans 10 episodes, but it is only a short time that we follow these women's adventures, so there isn't any meaningful depth in our observations of these relationships. But it is nonetheless fascinating to watch how people do or do not connect, and how sometimes things simply do not work no matter how much you try to force it. There is a fairly diverse group of lesbians and bisexuals in I Kissed a Girl, which makes it educational for those of us who don't know very many queer women. Perhaps selfishly, I would have liked inclusion of trans people in the show. There are masked lesbians, of course, but wouldn't it be interesting to see if trans women would bring a different dynamic to the group? Warren, how would you have done if you're 25 and on a dating show?
Oh, I don't know, Suzy. I don't reckon I would go on a dating show unless it was that one that we reviewed a few months ago. I don't know.
Which one did we review a few months ago? Oh, the one in Hong Kong.
Yeah. That was cool. Look, look. It's interesting because what I found is the queer dating shows that we've watched here with you, Suzy Wrong, they don't seem to have that nastiness that you see on a lot of the heterosexual dating shows. And I often wonder, why is that? Because we all know that queers can be nasty, just like anyone else, right? Why is it that we're not seeing that? We're seeing a completely different, more sort of polite format when it comes to queer dating. Is it because the production companies are scared that they might offend the community? I'm glad that we're not seeing that because I don't like it, but there is a difference, isn't there, between the heterosexual dating world or the shows and the queer ones that we've seen. What do you reckon, Suzy?
We still have to be very careful about queer villains. I think it is sort of time to explore that possibility, but probably more in a fictional realm. In reality, queer villains are just really problematic, and not just for how straight people view us, but also our own vision of ourselves. I think we still need a fair bit of inspiration, and I think because reality for queer people are quite new still. Obviously reality has been around for a while, but in terms of queer content, exclusively queer reality, I feel like it's too new for us to get into too dark a place. So the shows tend to be a little bit light and bright.
And I suppose too, the other thing is that and we saw this with I Kissed a Girl, is contestants are sharing their personal stories about coming out, and they reveal their struggles and their triumphs of being visible in a world, I suppose, that isn't always that welcoming or accepting. And the thing I liked about that is, I know that some people say, we need to move on from just coming out, etc. But it does sort of foster a bit or create a bit of empathy, doesn't it, from the viewer, and a bit of understanding, and saying, well, you know what, yeah, we all get that. We know how that feels. We've got that in common. And I found that with some of the contestants on this show is I developed a bit of empathy towards them because they're all going through similar things.
It is still relevant. Like, these girls, their parents are like our sort of age, not much older than our age. So, Generation X's are much more open to living with queer people. So their parents don't seem to be as difficult as, the previous generations. But they still gotta go through a process of coming out, and these stories kind of remind me that, it is a different time that we live in, but they still have to navigate these challenging situations, and it's interesting to see that even though the opposition against them isn't as fierce as what we experience, but they still have to go through that process. And there's also the thing where, because it's easier to come out, you have to understand that sometimes they're not entirely sure. When do you come out? Like, do you come out when you've had your first same-sex, sexual experience? Or, when does it happen? Or, so those are interesting questions for kind of a new generation. I did like brief discussions they had. I wish the discussions were more intensive. Like, there was one they were talking about the word lesbian, and I've always been curious, because the word lesbian to me sounds like it's not incredibly widely used, and I wondered.
And it's declining apparently in use.
Yeah, and then the girls, sure enough, we found out that some of the girls are actually quite uncomfortable with that word. Like, they associate kind of like a negativity towards it. And then some women really embrace it. And I thought it was a good opportunity to have those discussions because you've got, 10 queer women in the space. But those discussions were few and far between.
We're chatting with Suzy Wrong about I Kissed a Girl, which you can currently stream on Binge. Suzy, I suppose beyond the romantic connections that we saw in the show, we also saw emphasis put on the importance of friendship and solidarity within the queer community. And I noticed that some of the contestants, they form, quite good friendships and platonic friendships as well. That I suppose is something that does happen, doesn't it, in our community? We do form these friendships, and we need these friendships to show that we are solid as a community.
Yeah, I've mentioned on the show many times I watch a lot of Real Housewives, and in those shows it's just a cast of women unable to get along usually, and there's a lot of kind of infighting. So it was good to see a big group of women trying to get along, even though clearly, because they've got these dynamics of who's gonna be pairing up with who, and that thing that kind of does cause some conflict, but they don't really let those dramas control their relationships too much, and because there isn't all that bitchiness. I think for people like you and I who are not kind of sexually attracted to women, the show might be a bit
challenges the stereotypes, doesn't it, about queer women, because there's a real wide range of personalities, different interests, different relationship dynamics, etc. in the show. So I thought that it did challenge the stereotypes. You mentioned the word lesbian before, and I thought that was good. I thought they did that well.
Yeah, I love that. I love that the women looked different. They sounded different. They're from, different parts of the UK, different accents. And I loved especially that the most solid pairing was two queer women of color, one South Asian and one, I don't think she mentioned, but she looks possibly Caribbean or African. So that was really good to see, just because brown women who are queer, we don't kind of hear their stories very much, and we don't see that representation very much. But on this occasion, not only are they represented, they are falling in love. So that was actually pretty special.
Suzy, one of the things I struggle with when it comes to reality TV, particularly dating shows, is I feel like I wonder how authentic the emotions are, or how real the person is in terms of what we're seeing. And I don't know, what do you think on that? Do you feel like these shows foster an environment where there can be that open communication and emotional honesty, or do you think that by nature, being in one of these reality dating shows, you got to be on show? You got to put on a performance. You might be thinking, oh my goodness, what if some talent scout is watching or something like that? What do you reckon, Suzy?
I always think that the main motivation of these cast members is that they want a career in entertainment, that before finding a partner. But I think the human mind works quite unusually, it's not a straightforward experience. I feel like you can go in with one motivation of creating a career in entertainment, but you can trick yourself into going into these spaces. Like, you can trick yourself into thinking, all right, for the next 4 weeks or however many weeks, I'm going to experience romance and fall in love. And then through that, you can portray something on the screen. I think the bigger question for me as an avid reality viewer is that because there's been so many years of reality, like, the viewer has become so shrewd, like jaded, like we are watching for all these cues, like how real is it, when are they faking it, when are they not faking it. And the danger is that because we are looking for the moments when it looks really authentic, that's when the stakes become maybe too high. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're creating drama in a way that you don't feel like the cast can act anything. Like, it has to be real. So sometimes, not in I Kissed a Girl, but sometimes in a lot of the other reality shows I watch, there are really like ethically questionable situations where these men and women are put into, just to get a sense of reality.
Suzy, just on the dating, on Sunday, we were having pizza at home, and I said I always order 2 pizzas because I have this thing, I like a breakfast pizza the next day. I love it. It's my favourite thing. And he wouldn't let me. He was like, no, we only need 1. And I gave in, and afterwards I was thinking, oh my goodness, I love my second pizza. And then the next day he texted me, he said, oh, I was so hungry afterwards, I stopped in for some takeaway dumplings on the way home. Do you reckon that's a deal breaker?
Compromise is the biggest part of relationships, and compromise is very hard when you're of a certain age. I can't do it.
Are you dating at the moment? Can I ask you?
Well, I'm not dating like in the traditional way. I have boys that I see that are very different from platonic friends. But the distance is a big thing. Like, if the distance becomes too close, I just feel like things fall apart. Like these tensions, I had one big breakup because the guy insisted on playing tennis. I said I didn't want to play tennis, and then he turned it into a thing, and I'm like, I don't want to explain to you. Like, he was like, why don't you want to do this? Why is it so hard? I said, I don't want to explain. Can we just not do it? And then it became a thing and we broke up. I think when you're younger, when you're in your 20s, your hormones just make you a lot more amenable to these situations. I remember that very clearly. Like, I was bending over backwards. I was turning myself into a pretzel just so that I could be in a really great relationship.
No.
But those days are completely over.
Oh, Suzy, if someone asked you and I, we should date, because if someone asked me to play tennis, I'd be like, nah. No way.
Yeah, I said no. Just move on.
I'll do lawn bowls or something.
But when you're younger, it's different. Younger, you're like, you would do so much, just to feel that sensation of romance.
Suzy, I've just put in a song for you because I feel like this is what you did to the tennis person. It's Jojo. It's Leave, Get Out. Before we play it, what are we watching next week?
Yeah. Okay, next week, Queer, starring Daniel Craig. It's screening at Cinema Nova tomorrow, with the theatrical season commencing in a couple of weeks all around Australia. It's a film about obsession and addiction. I'm sure there'll be lots to discuss when I see you next Tuesday.
You're tuned into Joy Drive.
Thanks,
on
Suzy.
Joy 94.9.